Be question 1. Find the equation of a line containing the given points. Express your answer in slope-intercept form. Now, the contained points are 3, -7, and -4 over -4 and 7. So these are my 2 point values. I'm looking at this and going, I want to identify either slope or I want to identify the y-intercept. I can identify slope by plugging this into the form rise over run, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And when we do that, we'll just label this x1, y1, x2, y2. So we'll just plug these numbers in, and we'll go 7 minus a -7 divided by a -4 minus a 3. We're going to move this over, and we realize when we minus a minus, it's actually a plus. So 7 plus 7 will be 14. And you'll have -4 and -3, which would be -7. And we can simplify this because both numbers are divisible by 7. And that would end up giving us a 2, but it'd be a 2 over -1. Or we would write it as a -2 value. So we know that our slope, our m, is going to equal -2. So then we go back up to our questions and we start looking which one of these is a -2. That's where we realize B has a -2 as a slope. Nobody else does. If they did, though, we would then take either one of our 2 point values and we would plug it back in to solve for the y-intercept, and then we would know exactly which one of the 2 answers was right. In this question, writing the equation line again, but instead we have 1 point and we have something that's parallel to an equation. Now, the first thing we know about parallel lines is that they will go the same direction, which means they have the same slope. Their slope will be equal. Perpendicular have reciprocal, but we'll get into that later on. So in this case, parallel is going to have the same slope as this solution up here. However, it's not in y equals mx plus b form, so we're going to have to turn it into that. So we got 3x plus 7y equals 3. And we're going to want to get the y alone. So first thing we're going to do is subtract 3x from both sides. At this point, come on, there we go. At this point, we're then going to rewrite it as 7y equals -3x plus 3, and then we're going to divide both sides by 7 because we want to cancel out 7 and leave y alone. So this being rewritten would be y equals -3 over 7x plus 3 over 7. And we know since it has the same m value, I can take this value and say that this value will be my slope. So let me look up at the answers that we have. I'm looking for -3 over 7. So C could work and B could work. But I don't know which one because they both have the same slope. So at this point, I'm going to plug the other numbers back into this equation to see which B value I'm going to have. I'm going to change my colors real quick for this. And we're going to go down here and we're going to say y equals, instead of m, we're going to do -3 over 7x plus b, right? So y equals mx plus b, but I substituted m in as 3 over 7. And I know that the point it's going to go through is -6 and 7. So I'm going to put this over on the side, -6 and 7. This is an x, y intercept, right? That means when x equals this number, y equals that number. So I can plug these two into x and y to find out what b is. So we're going to say that 7 equals -3 divided by 7 times 6 plus b. This is a cool thing. I'm going to try and get this math done real quick. Okay, you want to beat me to it on the calculator? Negative 3 divided by 7 times 6. Negative 18 over 7. Is it? It is. My bad. So it'll be a positive 18 over 7 plus b equals 7. So at this point, we're going to subtract the 18 divided by 7 from both sides, which just means we're going to say 7 minus our 18 over 7. And we still want the answer in fractions, so we know that it's going to be 67 over 7. That's going to equal, come on, our b value. Okay? So we now know our b value. We remember that our m value. So let's see if this b value is up on any one of our multiple choice. How did I do that wrong? What happened here?
You got 67 over 7.
Yeah. I feel like I got the answer wrong, though. Because it should be b, if I'm right. Because it should be 31 over 7. Maybe I plugged something in wrong with my calculator. Number 2? Yeah. I just plugged something in wrong with my calculator. So, try that again. Because, yeah, it'd be a whole 7 minus the 18 over 7. I see. All right, I went wrong. I added them. That was my mistake. So, 7 minus 18 over 7 divided by 7. That's actually going to be 31 over 7. So that's wrong. It's going to be 31 over 7 equals b. And at that point, we'll go back up and we'll look at the 4 different answers. Yep, because when I subtracted 18 over 7 from right, then I went in and I told it to do the fraction calculate, and it gave me 31 over 7. But you could just multiply this by 7, which would be 49 over 7, and then you just subtract them across and get 31. Okay, cool. Thank you. I do need to keep checking this. Okay, so then we go back up here, and we'd say which one of our b values has the 31, and we see it right here, so we know answer is b. Solve an application of linear functions. The average price in dollars to rent a studio in a certain city can be approximated by the equation P equals 31.3 T plus 631, where T is the number of years since 1990. Solve this equation for T and use the new equation to determine approximately what year it will be when the average price of the studio reaches $13.50. Okay, so in that scenario, I believe we'd be plugging in our, okay, so we have answers there, but solving in for that. No, where's my? Okay. So because we're looking for when the P, which is the price, equals, so you're looking for when P equals 1413.50, what you could do is you could set that equation equal to it and then solve for T. So you go 1413.50 cents equals our equation of 31.3 T plus 631. So the first thing we'll do is subtract 631 from both sides. 52 carries a 1 over, so that ends up being 11. Minus 3 is going to be 8, or no, yeah, 8. And then this became a 3, so 13 will be 7. So that should be 782 and 50 cents if anybody wants to check with it. Okay, so then equals 31.3t. That means both sides are going to be divided by 31.3. And I hear calculators. What would be the answer for that? T equals what? Oh, 25? 25. So our answer is 25, right? Sounds like a reasonable thing. Oh, no, we don't have those numbers. But we know that it's going to be right. We're going to add that to the original year, which is 1990. So 1990 plus 25 years will be 2015. That is correct. So we'll then know that, because we'll go 25 plus 1990 equals 2015. Great year to be alive. Oh, I wasn't. Let me go back to this and go to 6x plus 9y equals 69. And then you see the other one, which is negative 2x minus 3y equals negative 23. And we want to eliminate out a item. So if I wanted to eliminate out the x's, because one's positive, one's negative, and they both have commonality of 3, that means that I want to multiply the bottom half, the entire equation, by 3, right? So we can do that real quick, and we would get a negative 6x, and then 3 times negative 3 is negative 9y, and then negative 23 times negative 69. Wait a minute, there's something fishy going on here. If I eliminate this, what will I get? 0 equals 0. And when I'm doing systems of linear equations, if you guys encounter a 0 equals 0 and you don't have a variable, what does that mean? That is right, there's infinitely many solutions. However, if you solve this through and you lose both variables and you have a 7 equals a 2, what does that mean? Right, it means there will be no solution because they're inconsistent. If the number equals the number, if 5 equals a 5, if 2 equals 2, it will work out to being infinitely many solutions. And that's where we have C. And C will be the right answer for this one. If not, after this point, we would then get a y value equals a number. We would solve that. No, it's infinite because a number equals a number, and they're both the same number, so that's infinitely many solutions. This is an example of what would happen for a no-solution system. Say I got two numbers that are not the same value that equal each other. That's impossible in the math world. So what that's saying is there will be no solutions from these two lines, which would basically be parallel lines. They're either parallel or it's one and the same line, and all of them are the same answer. Right, right. Question 5, solve the system of linear equations by substitution. If the system is inconsistent or has dependent equations, say so. All right, so there's a lot of fractions. Which one do I want to plug in first? Guess that works. Okay. By 2. How does what? How do we substitute? Okay, so because we're looking at these two, and 3 of the 4 different variables have fractions in front of them, I'm going to actually work with the non-fractioned one, which is the 2y. I'm going to want to get that alone to being just 1y, so I can substitute it in for the other side. So in order to do that, I'm going to just move everything away, kind of like I do with slope-intercept form. So if I have the 5 over 6x minus 2y equals 21, I'll end up subtracting 5 over 6x from both sides. And that'll give me a negative 2y equals negative 5 over 6x plus 21, at which point in time I'll divide everything by negative 2. So this side cancels, and negative 2. I'm trying to remember how to do that. If it's division by negative 2, so it would be negative 5 divided by 6, which is then divided by negative 2, would give me a 5 over 12. So I would get a 5 over 12x plus, and that's just going to be 21 over negative 2. So it'll actually be a minus. Yep, it's going to be minus 21. Because what happened is this was a positive 21, that was a negative 2. So the negative sign goes to the top. So we just make it minus 21x divided by, or 21 divided by 2. So at this point, that equation here equals y, right? So we could take this whole equation and we could shove it into the other one for the y value. So this is going to become a little bit of a nightmare. So we'll have 7 divided by 3. Might need someone to spit that answer out at me over there. Okay, nope, got it. X plus 5 over 4 of 5, 12x minus 21 over 2, close, equals 4. End up. So at this point, we're going to have to multiply these across. So 5 times 5 is going to be 25 over 4 times 12, which is what? 4 times 12? Anybody? 48? Cool. Minus, and again, we'll do 21 times 5, which will give us 105 divided by 4 times 2 is going to be 8 equals 4 on the outside, and this has an x value, and then it's going to be 7 over 3x plus that. So then I got to find the common denominator between 48 and 3. At a fast food counter, the first group bought 8 slices of pizza and 4 soft drinks, which is $33.44. The second group bought 6 slices of pizza and 4 soft drinks, which is $26.44. How much does 1 slice of pizza cost? Well, let's write this out as a system of linear equations. We've got 8. And we're going to say pizza is x, and soft drinks are going to be our y value, plus 4y equals 33.44, and then we're going to have 6x plus 4y equals 26.44. Now, from this, we want to figure out the amount of x, which is our pizzas, how much they cost per slice. So I want to cancel out y's. And when you write out and look at it, you'll realize that both of the y values are 4. So if I decided to multiply either equation by a -1, I could do elimination method and cancel out my y's, which will leave me with how many x's equals how much money. So we're going to do that real quick, and that will give us a negative 6x minus 4y minus 26.44. So now we're going to go over this and go, if we have 8x minus 6x will give us 2x. The 4's end up canceling out to nothing, and then that's going to equal 44 minus 44, 0, 0. And then 33 minus 26 and give us 3 more, so it's going to be $6. So $6 will give us 2 slices of pizza, which means each slice of pizza will cost us $3, because we'll just divide both sides by 2. Yep. And that means that our x will equal $3. So our pizza slice is going to be answer B, because that is our $3 option. I rushed my numbers there. It's actually going to be 7 here. I'm going to put that in a different color just so we can do that real quick. This is actually $7, not $6, which means when we do it by that, we're going to add an extra 50 cents on there. So that means that x will equal $3.50. And that is actually going to be the answer A. In the compound inequality and give the solution set in both interval and graph form. First suggestion is to look at all of the items and see whether or not they work. We're going to have to solve each of the equations on their own first to x is greater than or less than or equal to some number. So let's start with the first one, saying we have 12x minus 8 is greater than 4x. And then or, so or means that they don't both have to be in the same spot together to work, which means any part of the line that works will work for this graph. So that already tells us that A will not work, because A would only work if it was an and they were in 2 different locations. So going back to this, what I can do is I can move the x's all to the same side. I'm going to move them towards the 12x, and I'm going to move the 8 to the other side so that there is positive numbers on both sides, so division will be easier. So we're going to add 8 to both sides, and we're going to subtract 4x from both sides. When we do that, we'll end up with 12x minus 4x, which is going to be 8x is less than or equal, or sorry, is less than a positive 8. And if we divide both of those by 8, we'll end up seeing that x is less than 1 for part of it. So we've got that part in the back of our heads. Now we need to see what else.
Add 8 and
1 being negative 2x is less than or equal to negative 6. We're going to have to just divide both sides by a negative 2, which involves a sign flip. And then x will be greater than or equal to a positive 3. And then we start looking over at our graphs and say, all right, do I see something that says that I am going from negative infinity up to, but not touching, 1? And then do I have something that goes from 3 all the way onward to infinity? Let's see, do I have anything that looks like that here? Well, C is probably going to be the right answer. C is the right answer, but just looking back at the other ones, these ones are cased on the inside, and more importantly, there are both either parentheses or brackets. Solve for the inequality and give the solution set both intervals and graph form. We're going to have to solve each one down. So we're going to have 6x minus 8 is greater than or equal to negative 38. So in this scenario, I'm going to add 8 to both sides, which is going to leave me with 6x is greater than or equal to a negative 30, which then x, because we're going to divide both sides by 6, x is greater than or equal to 5. So that's going to be one of our answers. And so this means that we're going to have them overlapping. Negative 5. Oh, yep. My bad, negative 5. Then we're going to go to the second one, which is 6x minus 8 is less than or equal to negative 14. Again, we'll add 8 to both sides. We'll get 6x is less than or equal to, I'm going to add that, so it's going to end up being a minus 6. We'll divide both of these by 6, and you'll end up with x is less than or equal to negative 1. Now we go back over to this side and we look for those number sets. They all have them. And because they're both equals, we see that these both have brackets. And it does make sense that it is captured between these 2 points. Okay, simplify the complex fraction. Let's see how they want me to do that. We're going to simplify a complex fraction. We're going to have to multiply them. Okay, so if you remember when we were dividing fractions by fractions, this is a complex fraction, but it can also be looked at as if it was x over 5, divisionary symbol, 9 over x plus 7. Can anyone remember how we divide fractions? That's right, we actually cross multiply. So what we'll do is we'll flip the second one and we'll multiply them together. So we end up with an x divided by 5 times x plus 7 over 9. And that will equal x and x plus 7 over 9 times 5, which is 45. And at this point, I can already see that the answer is going to be D. If I had to factor it through, it would end up as x squared plus 7x, but they wanted it in a factored form. So to solve the rational equation, so looking at this, we know that one side is going to have an x minus 2, and the other one's x plus 1. So we're going to try and get rid of all that, and the best way to do that will be multiplying both parts by their reciprocals. So we'll end up with, if we have our 10 over x minus 2 equals 1 plus 12 over x plus 2. What we'll end up doing is, okay, so the way they're doing it is they're setting it up as a full item. My bad. Come on. So they set this up as a full equation here. This isn't even a thing. And then they said, since both of these are part of the denominator, we're just going to cancel them out by multiplying this by x plus 2 times x minus 2. So what you'll do is you'll then distribute these over each of the numbers. Right. So for this one, what we'll end up doing is the first part, when we multiply this by that, we'll cancel that out, leaving us with a 10. And then the 10 will end up getting multiplied by x plus 2, right? So then that will equal, and 1, because 1 isn't divided by anything, it'll end up as both parts. Like imagine this whole piece getting just dropped over and put there. So we'll have the x plus 2 and the x minus 2. And then we're going to say plus, and we look at the 12 value and we evaluate and say x plus 2 is on the bottom part of it. So we won't show that up, but we'll say it's going to be 12 times x minus 2 because that's the other one. Next, we're going to distribute these, which gives us 10x plus 20 equals, and that's going to be a foiling, so it's going to be x squared minus 4. And the reason I know that is because they're perfect squares, so I immediately cancel out the middle value because the negative 2 and the positive 2 will cancel out when they multiply by x individually, and then I'll just put their squared value down on the bottom half as well. Plus, and then we're going to do this distribution here, 12x minus 12 times 2 is going to be 24. At this point, I'm going to move everything over to one side of the equation, and then I'll be able to factor it out properly. So we're going to have to subtract 20 from both sides and subtract 10x from both sides. So that'll leave us with a 0 equaling x squared. We're going to go plus 12x minus 10x. Then we have minus 20 minus 24 minus 4. Now, I left all the items separate, and I didn't condense them because I want to condense them the right way. I'm going to leave the x squared by itself because there's nothing I can do. The x's, I could put them together, but if I leave them apart, it'll be easier for factoring in a moment. And then I'm going to put all of these together here, which are numbers. So 20, 24, and 4, so that's going to be 4 and 4 is going to be 8. 20 and 20 is going to be 4, so 48. So it'll be a minus 48. Okay, come on. Seriously.
No, it would be 40, minus 40.
Is it minus 40? How? It's minus 48.
Because the minus, it was already a
Minus 4.
4.
But it's 8 on that side. I didn't switch sides for that one. Okay, let's try this again since I just crashed. Hello? There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So as we were saying, oh, I got to rewrite. Wait, did I do it? I did do it. Yeah, this is just a 48. So minus a 48. And this is going to be a plus 12x minus 10x x squared. So at this point, I can look at the top part and say, what are these? And we'll figure out of those. Is that even possible? Okay, so in the first one, what can I pull out of them? I can pull out an x value. And then I would leave a x plus 12, but that's not going to work. Okay. Actually, just got to merge those together. Yeah, my bad. So I'm just going to end up making this x squared plus 2x minus 48. My apologies on that. I'm actually going to put it together this way because I'm looking for things that would add up to 2 that would subtract. So that's actually subtraction for 48. So we're going to do our fast fractioning. We know x is going to be x times x, so we write that down. We bring down the first sign being positive, and then we'll say positive times a negative is a negative. So the second one's going to be negative. So I'm looking at this going, I need a positive number and I need a negative number. They're going to multiply up to 48, but will subtract up to 2. And I can start going through it, and I'll find out that it's going to be 6 and it's going to be 8. So it's going to be a, wait, did I do that right? Yep, it's going to be a positive 8 and it's going to be a negative 6. Right? Positive 8, negative 6. No. Positive 6, negative 8. I have a confusion. If we have the answers for positive 6 and negative 8, remember how we had it equal to 0 all the way up here? We're now going to bring that down and say that this is equal to 0. And to figure out our two solutions from this, we'll just make 0 equals x plus 8 and 0 equals x minus 6, and we'll just have to subtract 8 from this side, giving us a negative 8 equals x, and then adding 6 to this side, so then it becomes 6 equals x. So we know that x will either equal 6 or negative 8 as an answer. Alright, so this is another word problem. If one maid can clean a house 3 times faster than the other, working together, they can clean the entire house in 3 hours. How long would it take the faster maid to clean alone? This is similar to the question of how many widgets can so-and-so make versus how many widgets can so-and-so make per hour. So because it takes them 3 total hours to make this, we're just going to first of all say equals 3. Then we're going to think about this and go, well, in 1 hour, they would be able to make a house 1/3 of the way clean, right? So this one will end up being 1 over x plus 1 over 3x. It up in a compound fraction like this, where you want to get the x's to be able to add together, so we have to make the same common denominator. So the initial thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to multiply this by 3 over 3 in order to get the same base denominator. So you have a base denominator of 3x, and since this 1 gets multiplied by a 3, we'd end up with a 3 plus 1, which would be 4, and then you have a 1 on top of it equaling 3 still. Which point in time how are we going to do this?
Why don't you multiply that by 3? The fraction.
Why did I multiply the fraction this side?
Yeah.
Oh, because I wanted to be able to add them across.
Oh, okay.
So to add the fractions, I had to make same common denominator. So I multiplied this by 3 to give it as a 3x, so I could add them together. But I had to multiply the top by it, so it became 3 over 3x, and then I ended up adding them together to give me 4 over 3x. Which point in time, how did they cancel out? Okay, I see what they did. So this comes back to division of division, where it's actually just a reciprocal of multiplication. So instead of this all being divided by, or 1 being divided by all of this, they flipped it back again, and they said this is equal to 3x divided by 4, equaling 3. Multiply 4 to both sides of the equation. That way we cancel out the 4 that's there, and that would end up giving us 3x equals 12, and then you'll end up dividing both of those by 3, which gives you x equals 4. So you know that the faster maid will be able to clean in 4 hours, whereas the slower maid will be able to clean in 12 hours. Okay, so in this equation, we're going to use long division to divide the polynomials. So we will have m plus 9 to the outside, and on the inside of the box, we're going to have 4m squared plus 31m minus 45. Now remember, if you have a value, for example, if you have m to the third and then you have just regular m, make sure you put in a space under the house for m squared, just in case we end up multiplying a number and creating an m squared. I'll show you what that means shortly, because what we're going to do here is we say we have m as our main part of this division. So what things can I use to make m cancel out 4m squared? Multiply it by 4m. So that'll end up giving me a 4m squared when I multiply it back by the m, but I also have to multiply that 4m by the 9. So when I multiply 4m by 9, I end up getting 4 times 9, which is 36. We're going to have that as 36m. Now, at this point, I have to do my math, which means I will make everything down here negative. So we'll cancel out the 4's into not existing. We'll then say that it's going to be 31m minus 36m, which will give us a minus 5m value, minus 45. We're going to bring down the next number set. Now looking at this, I have m, and I have a negative 5m. How am I going to turn m into negative 5m? I got to multiply it by negative 5, so I'll go up here and say minus 5. When I do that, I'll go back and multiply it just to check, and that becomes minus 5m. And then I got to multiply it by the 9. So then it's 9 by 5 will be negative 45, because it's a negative 5. Good job. So negative 45 down here. And then again, I'll make the signs oppose. And what you'll realize is you perfectly cancel out no remainder, which gives us an answer of 4m minus 5. Question 13, we're going to solve by factoring. let's see if we can quickly factor this number here. We're going to have an x squared plus 4x minus 21. We're going to say, since its x value does not have a coefficient, it's going to be x times x. Forget my... Come on, seriously? X times x, and then we're going to bring down the positive number, so positive value there, and then we will do positive times a negative makes a negative value. Just cannot win with this thing today. So at that point, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply up to negative 21 that will subtract to 4. If I think about that long enough, I'll work through and I'll find that 21 either has 1 and 21 or 3 and 7. So I'll put the greater number being 7 at the positive because it keeps the same sign as the number up here. And then I'll put the other one as being the 3, which is the sign down there. And that will give us a C is our answer. Okay, so we're going to have to find all solutions by factoring. First thing we have to do is make sure everything is on the same side of the equation, which we could move it towards where everything is negative, but we're actually going to move it towards us, so we're going to make everything positive. So that means we're going to add 9k to both sides, and then we're going to add 9 to both sides. So that's going to give us 2k squared plus 9k plus 9 equals 0. And at this point, we're going to have to factor. And now we realize that we do not have just a singular letter or singular number in the first variable set. So we're going to have to do the AC method. So 2 times 9 would be 18. And you're looking for a number that would add up to 9. It's not going to work out real well. Things that multiply to 18 that would add up to 9. Is that right? Good point. So, yeah, again, you go 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and there is a 6 and a 3, which I forgot about. So at 6 and 3, we know that that would work. So that means that our actual thing is going to look like 2k squared plus, which one? Yeah, plus both of them, plus 3k plus 6k plus 9. So this would look like the actual one. At this point, we could do factor by grouping. So we would look at the group here and say, what can we pull out? We can pull out a k value. So if k value is pulled out, the internal will be 2k plus 3. And then we'll look at the other one and say, what commonality can we pull out of there? We can pull a 3 out of it as a common number. So we'll have 3 on the outside. And then we'll leave in 2k plus 3, which would lead us to saying that k plus 3 times 2k plus 3 equals 0. Now we have to actually set each one of these equations equal to 0 and figure out what they're going to be equal to. So k plus 3 equals 0, and then 2k plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides over on this one, so we'll know that k can equal negative 3. Or, on the other hand, we will subtract 3 from both sides again, and then it'll leave us with a 2k equals negative 3. So we'll end up dividing both sides by 2, and that'll leave us with an answer of k equals a negative 3 halves as a secondary answer. We're going to take both of these answers and take them back up to the top. And when we look at the top value, we will realize that both negative 3 and negative 3 halves is going to be one of our answers. 15, find all solutions by factoring. So in this scenario, we do not have a trinomial, but we're going to have to move it over onto one side of the equation still. So we're going to have a 9x squared, and we're going to subtract 9x from both sides. So that's going to be 9x squared minus 9x equals 0. Now at this point, if I'm trying to factor it, what common things can I pull away from it? So looking at these two, I can pull 9 out of both of them, and I can pull an x value out of both of them. So if it was an 9x, then I go x minus 1. Minus 1 equals 0. So I have two answers sitting here still. We have the 9x equals 0 and the x minus 1 equals 0. So x will end up equaling 1, and x will still equal 0 because 0 divided by 9 is still 0. So we'll look and see if we have the answers 1 and 0. We do, in fact, have answers 1 and 0. So the revenue for a small company is given by the quadratic function of r to t equals 12t squared plus 3t plus 610, where t is the number of years since 1998, and RT is in thousands of dollars. In this trend continues, find the year after 1998 in which the company's revenue will be $20,000 and $95. Round to the nearest whole year for company. So we're going to set this value equal to RT. So 2095 equals 12t squared plus 3t plus, let me make those look better, plus 610. We're going to have to subtract our money value from both sides. This will give us that 0 equals 12t squared plus 3t minus, calculator on that real quick, minus so minus 1,485, which at this point we're now going to factor this, which since we do have a number before our t value, we're actually going to have to do our AC method, which would give me, how did they do that? How did they do that? Okay, so for question 18, we're going to subtract the expressions, simplify the answers in lowest term. The cool thing about this is they're both the common denominator already. So we don't have to worry about that. We'll already just say equals, and we already know that the bottom part is going to stay the same for now. The top part, let's see. So this negative sign will be distributed to both of these numbers. So it'll be a negative x and it'll be a negative 4. So 2x minus x will be 1x. And then 7 minus 4 would be 3. So it'll be x plus 3. So now the top part is going to be x plus 3, and then we're going to say it's going to be x squared plus 4x plus 3. And that's good and all, but I don't have that as an answer, which tells me, is this simplified? No. I'm going to have to factor the bottom half, because I'm almost sure that this is going to cancel out somehow. So I look at this and I go, okay, I know it's going to be an x and an x value, and then I'll just say positive, and positive times a positive is a positive, so they're both going to be positive numbers. So what numbers do I have that'll multiply to 3 that'll add up to, right, 3 and 1? So we've got 3 and 1, and then we'll realize very quickly that this x plus 3 and this x plus 3 cancel out, and then you would have an imaginary 1 on top of an x plus 1, which would be answer A. We use the square root property to solve the equation. Remembering the square root property, if we are breaking this down, we would say that 2x minus 5 would be equal to, and we'd square root the 49 into a plus or minus 7. These would equal each other. And if we did the math really quickly from there, we would then be able to, let's just add the 5 to both sides, giving us 2x equals, and we could split the equation here, but I'm going to keep it going. So we're going to say 5 plus or minus 7, which then we'll divide both sides by 2. We'll have x equals, and that's where you'll break it down to 5 plus 7 would be 12 over 2, or 5 minus 7, which would be negative 2 over 2. So you'd end up with an answer of either negative 1, or you'd end up with an answer of 6. You look up very quickly and notice that D is your answer. 20. Solve an application of a quadratic function. Make sure to round your answer to the nearest second, or tenth of a second, I'm guessing is what it says. I can't read my part there. All right, so the function is defined by d of t is 13t squared minus 73t, gives the distance in feet that a car going approximately 50 miles per hour will skid in t seconds. Find the amount of time it would take for the car to skid 380 feet. So at this point, we're going to put 380 feet in as our dt. We will set it equal to 13t squared minus 73t. And then we will move it over to the other side, which means 0 will equal 13t squared minus 73t minus 380. At which point we realize that we cannot factor this on our own. So we will put it into the quadratic formula, which is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then once we do that, we would plug in each of the values, 13, 73, and 380. You can actually plug this into a calculator this way at this point. Find the domain of the rational function give the domain in set builder notation. So we're now going to look at these and realize that we need to cancel out first. So we're going to factor these, which gives us 3x squared. So again, the biggest part about this is we need to know that whenever we're doing a non-linear function, that the fraction part of it does not equal 0 on the bottom side. We don't want that to happen because we can't divide by 0. So the instances that it does equal 0 are the instances that we cannot have it exist, right? So we'll then go back and just set that part, 3x squared minus 6x minus 9, equal to 0, and we're going to factor it out in order to get our answer, okay? So we can work with this, and we can do the AC method real quick. So we're going to go 3 times 9 is going to be 27. It's going to be negative 27. So how are we going to add up to negative 27? What are the two things that we can, multiples that we can use for 6 that would go into, that would become 27? 9 and 3, so if I did a 9 and 3, right. 9 and 3 would be our variables, which means that we're going to end up with 3x squared minus, and we're going to go minus 9x plus 3x minus 9, and we can then factor by grouping. What's the common thing I can pull out of this? 3x, which leaves me with x minus 3. And then for the other one, what's the common thing I can pull out of this? I can pull out a 3, which means that x minus 3. And so I know that my two factors will be x minus 3, and it will be 3x minus 3, or no, plus 3, which point in time I can factor these out to be equaling 0 on each side. So that means that x will equal 3, and then I will switch that over. So 3x will equal negative 3, and then divide both sides by 3. So I end up with x equals negative 1. So I know that both at negative 1 and at 3 are going to be my two solution problems. So I look at these and go, I've got negative 1, negative 3. Is that right? Negative, oh no, it's negative 1 and negative 3, so that's not right. But just by looking at these, I know that A is not right because it's got a 9 in it. I know that B is not right because it's got a fraction in it. I've got both D and C with the right numbers, and I realize that the signs are proper on C, so the correct answer is C. Which graph matches the equation. So the first thing I'm going to look for is the graph positive or negative? They're all positive. Then I have to remember the h and k value, h being the inside value and k being the outside value. So if, and it's actually negative h for the inside, positive k for the outside. So if something is going down 4 units on k, it will actually go down. K is related to our y, while h is related to our x value. So we already know that this item, wherever it was, which x squared would be at the center point of the graph, has to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 points. So that rules out B, and that rules out D real quickly. Still looking back at this, we say now we're going to move x plus 2, but because h is a negative, we're going to be taking 2 away from it. So that means we'll go to the negative side, and we'll know that A is the right answer, and C is not because it went the wrong way. So then A is our right answer. Write the equation of a function is given characteristics. The graph of x squared or y shifted 3 units to the right. So if we're remembering again, whenever we move right and left, we're going to be dealing with our h value, and our h value will be negative to the directions we move on the x. And if we're dealing with up and down values, we will deal with k, and k is positively linked to the y value. So we're not dealing with any up or down shifts here, but we are dealing with shifts left and right. And treated the same way, we're going to have to put that inside of the parenthesis, not outside. This would be an h non-existing and a k being a negative 3. So that won't work for our problems already. Then we'll look at those and remember that since we've moved 3 units to the right, which is a positive direction, plus x value, that means we have to move a negative h number. So that means that h will be minus 3 on the inside, getting us to pick B. Question we use in quadratic formula to solve the equation. All solutions are real numbers, so first thing we have to do is put it into its quadratic, or into its polynomial function. So we'll go 3x times x plus 5 equals 2. We're going to distribute the first part, which is going to give us 3x squared plus 15x equals 2. Subtract 2 from both sides, so then we'll get 3x squared plus 15x minus 2, and then we'll plug this into the quadratic formula. Okay, so for this instance, we're going to identify the vertex of the given parabola, and one of the best ways we can do that is to look at the fact that this is already in the vertex formula form that we're looking for, where there's an h value on the inside and then there's a k value on the outside. And if we remember anything, we're going to say that the x equals a negative h value and the y equals a positive k value. Knowing that, if my h is positive 4, that means that my x equals negative 4. And then I know that my k will just equal negative 7. So I look around and go, 4, 4, yep, I already know it's going to be D. And my answer is done for this one. And solve the radical equation. In this equation, we are going to use, I'm on the wrong page here. We're going to set both of the square roots equal to each other. So we're going to do square root of 9a minus 2 will equal, because we want this to be a positive, so we got to move it to the other side to make it positive. The square root of 6a plus 6. Now, since they're on opposite sides of each other, the cool thing that we can do is whenever there's one unit of object, either a number or whatever it may be on one side, and there is a root on the other side, we can just take both sides of the equation and we can square them. When we do this, we're going to cancel out both roots. So we'll have 9a minus 2 equals 6a plus 6. And now this is just regular values back with x again. We want all of the variables on one side, all the numbers on the other side. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get 9a equals 6a plus 8. We're going to subtract 6a from both sides of the equation. That's going to leave us with 3a equals 8. We're going to divide both sides by 3, and we get a equals 8/3. And nope, 8/3, B. Final answer. Okay, so the radius of a right circular cone is given to the formula r equals the square root of 3v over pi h, where v is the volume and h is the height. If the volume is 1302 cubic centimeters and the height is 14 inches, what is the radius? Use 3.14 for pi and round your answer to the nearest tenth of an inch. So this is basically a plug-and-play situation where we're going to do 3 times the 1302 divided by 3.14 times the height being 14. And that's going to be under a square root to give us the r value. So again, you can plug this into your calculators, and you will end up with an answer close to 9.4 inches. Calculators, and how you'll do it is you'll use the square root box. You'll then use a parenthesis, go 3 times 1302, close parenthesis, division of open parenthesis 3.14 times 14, close parenthesis, and make sure that your arm bar is over the whole thing. Or if you're using an older calculator, you'll just put a second set of parentheses around it to identify that it goes around the whole thing. Okay. Find the result that the calculator would give for the stated problem. Write your answer using scientific notation. So with this, you could switch your calculator over to scientific notation to do the calculation, Or we could just work on this and say that we are going to have the 10 to the 15th times 10 to the negative 9th. So when we look at this, we'll realize very quickly that we're just going to do the differences of the squares, and that gives us a negative, positive 6 value? Positive 6 value. Right, so it's going to be 15 minus 9, which is going to give you 6, so that means it'll be 10 to the 6. So again, if we know that 15 times or 10 to the 15th and 10 to the negative 9th, we're just going to do the addition and subtraction of the exponents, which will give us 10 to the 6th. So we already know that the answer B and the answer C are going to be wrong. And then we will look at the 5 times 1.5, and that will actually give us a 7.5 positive because there are no negative values. I immediately know that A will be my right answer. So in this question, we're just going to be doing distribution. So that means our coefficients will have to multiply by each other, but our roots will, our exponents will just add to each other. So we'll have to change their fractions to be able to add to each other. So 3 times negative 4 is going to be a negative 12k, and then you're looking at a 1/8, 3/8, so that's going to be 4/8, which if you simplify 4/8, you'll get 1/2, and then you will multiply 3 by 6, which will give you plus 18, and from there you'll go 8 1/3, but you can do 1/8, and you have 3/4, so you're going to multiply this by 2 over 2, which gives you 1 over 8 and 6 over 8. So the 7 over 8k value. And we'll look at that really quickly and realize that the answer is C.